Some cities make you feel alive. Others will arrest you for feeding a pigeon. 1. Boulder, Colorado. The case of the criminal couch. In Boulder, it's illegal to have a couch on your front porch. Why? Because college students kept setting them on fire after football games. Yep, city officials decided it was easier to outlaw furniture than rowdy celebrations. So now, a front porch sofa isn't just tacky, it's contraband. Picture this: a SWAT team rolling up to seize a lazy boy like it's a drug bust. Imagine explaining to your neighbors that your crime was sitting too comfortably outdoors. It's the kind of rule that says, we've given up on human behavior. Let's just ban upholstery. Boulder, where even your furniture needs a lawyer. 2. Mobile, Alabama. Don't mess with Mardi Gras confetti. In Mobile, it's illegal to throw confetti or spray silly string during Mardi Gras. That's right. The birthplace of America's Mardi Gras outlawed its own party supplies. The reasoning? Litter. The city apparently decided that picking up tiny bits of joy was just too much trouble. So now, if you celebrate too colorfully, you can get cuffed for it. Somewhere, a cop has actually written confetti on a police report, which is either tragic or poetic. It's like telling people they can have fun, but only in shades of beige. In Mobile, it's not the party that gets out of control. It's the cleanup. 3. Waynesboro, Virginia. No spitting bugs. Allowed Waynesboro has a law banning anyone from spitting on a seagull. That's right, not assaulting it, not feeding it, spitting on it. You have to wonder what kind of small-town chaos led to that specific rule. Maybe one guy had a grudge against a bird and the city said, "All right, we're making this official." Imagine the courtroom. Your Honor, the seagull started it. Somewhere, a lawyer actually had to research avian saliva etiquette. It's a law that suggests there was once a golden era of people walking around just hawking loogies at wildlife. In Waynesboro, justice is for the birds. Literally. 4. Carmel by the Sea, California, the ice cream outlaw town. In the charming seaside utopia of Carmel by the Sea, it was once illegal to eat ice cream on the street. Yes, walking with a cone was considered a crime. Picture a sunny California afternoon, waves crashing, gulls soaring, and a local cop arresting a guy for double-fisting Rocky Road. The law was introduced in the 1920s to preserve public cleanliness, which is bureaucratic code for someone dropped a scoop and panicked. For decades, tourists had to choose melt or misdemeanor. Even Clint Eastwood, yes, that Clint Eastwood, ran for mayor in the 80s specifically to overturn the ice cream ban. Because apparently, Dirty Harry drew the line at dessert injustice. Today you can lick freely in Carmel, but the fact that it took a Hollywood legend to restore your right to dairy says everything about American lawmaking. Somewhere, an officer still remembers the Sunday sting of '63 when 3 teens were busted for cones and chaos on Ocean Avenue. 5. Gainesville, Georgia, the fried chicken felony. In Gainesville, it's technically illegal to eat fried chicken with a fork. The city proudly calls itself the poultry capital of the world, and they mean business, or in this case, finger-licking law enforcement. The ordinance, originally written as a joke in the 1960s, was later used for real. In 2009, a tourist was arrested during lunch by an undercover officer for improper poultry consumption. Thankfully, she was pardoned after a good laugh, but the rule still stands. It's Southern tradition elevated to government mandate. If you're going to eat chicken here, you'd better get greasy. Somewhere between hospitality and handcuffs, Gainesville found a way to turn dinner into a civic duty. It's the only town where your utensils could make you an outlaw, and where Colonel Sanders himself would have been cited for possession of cutlery. 6. Chico, California. The $500 bomb threat for laundry. Mishaps. Chico has one of the most unintentionally hilarious city ordinances in the U.S. If you detonate a nuclear device within city limits, you'll be fined $500. That's right, you can vaporize downtown, but you'll still owe $50,000 in municipal penalties. The law was written during the Cold War, when small towns wanted to appear prepared. Apparently, someone thought the biggest problem after nuclear annihilation would be unpaid fines. Imagine the city clerk's determination. "Sir, we can't rebuild the courthouse, but you still owe us for that blast." It's a rule that perfectly captures America's obsession with paperwork, even at the end of the world. Somewhere in Chico's archives, a dusty ledger waits patiently for its first post-apocalyptic transaction. It's bureaucratic optimism at its finest. If civilization collapses, at least we'll balance the budget. 7. Quitman, Georgia, the chicken crossing crisis. In Quitman, Georgia, there's an actual law making it illegal for chickens to cross the road. Yes, the age-old joke became a legal issue. Apparently, too many free-range hens were wandering into traffic, causing chaos and deep philosophical reflection. The ordinance specifically blames the owners for letting their poultry roam unsupervised. So, if your hen dares to explore the asphalt frontier, you're the one facing charges. It's the perfect small-town blend of Southern logic and sitcom absurdity. Protect your livestock, but mostly protect the punchline. You can almost imagine the courtroom scene. Your Honor, my client's chicken was merely seeking purpose. The law doesn't mention what happens if the bird makes it across successfully, but I'd like to think it earns a tiny medal for bravery. Quitman somehow managed to turn a one-liner into government paperwork, proving that even poultry jokes can become policy. 8. New York City, New York. The ice cream cone law? Yes, another one. New York City has seen it all. But did you know it's technically illegal to eat ice cream on Sundays while standing in front of a church? The law dates back to the early 1900s, when lawmakers were obsessed with keeping the Sabbath respectable. Apparently, a few melting cones near the chapel were enough to threaten the moral fabric of Manhattan. Imagine a cop interrupting your chocolate swirl with, "Sir, step away from the steeple." Of course, no one enforces it now, but it's still on the books, a sticky relic of America's strange obsession with controlling joy. Somewhere, a century-old bureaucrat believed that God himself disapproved of sprinkles near sacred architecture. In modern NYC, where you can buy a beer at 10 a.m. but not lick a cone by a church, the irony is almost holy. 9. Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. The Whisper Police. Rehoboth Beach once had a law banning loud laughter after 10 p.m. That's right, laughter was legally regulated. The city claimed it was about noise control, but really it sounded like someone lost sleep after a really good punchline. The ordinance grouped laughter with shouting, singing, and boisterous behavior, meaning a late-night giggle could technically make you a criminal. Picture a cop creeping up behind a group of friends and whispering, "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to tone down the joy." It's the kind of rule that only makes sense to someone allergic to fun. Local teens, of course, turned it into a challenge. Laughter parties on the beach became the ultimate act of rebellion. So if you ever find yourself in Delaware and feel a chuckle coming on after dark, just remember, happiness has a curfew. 10. San Diego, California, the Hypnotized Frog Ordinance. San Diego once passed a law making it illegal to hypnotize a frog. Yes, someone, somewhere, had a reason. The story goes back to the early 20th century, when frog jumping contests were all the rage. A few clever competitors tried to gain an edge by putting their amphibians into a trance to make them jump straighter. The city council, in peak bureaucratic form, stepped in, not to question why people were hypnotizing frogs in the first place, but to outlaw it entirely. Now, if you're caught with a glassy-eyed toad and a swinging pocket watch, you could technically face charges. It's a perfect mix of civic pride and sheer lunacy. We don't allow cheating here, especially if it involves reptilian hypnosis. The best part? The law never specifies how you're supposed to prove a frog's mental state. Somewhere, a police officer once had to look at a very calm amphibian and say, "Yeah, he's definitely under." 11. Minneapolis, Minnesota. The Red Car Rule. In Minneapolis, there's an obscure city ordinance that forbids red cars from driving down Lake Street on Sundays. It sounds made up, but it was actually a leftover from the early days of automobiles. In the 1910s, bright red cars were considered a public distraction because they startled horses and drew crowds. The city decided to limit their movement on weekends, the day of rest for both churchgoers and easily spooked livestock. Of course, the law is completely unenforceable now, but technically still valid. Imagine a cop in 2026 pulling someone over. "Sorry, sir, your Toyota Corolla is too passionate for the Lord's Day." It's the kind of ancient legislation that proves lawmakers once treated cars like wild animals, unpredictable, flashy, and best kept indoors on Sundays. 12. Eureka, Nevada, the Mustache Law. In Eureka, it's illegal for men with mustaches to kiss women in public. No, this isn't a joke. It's a relic from the 1800s when facial hair was seen as unsanitary. Lawmakers feared mustaches carried germs and could spread disease through romantic contact. So instead of promoting hygiene or soap, they banned public affection for the mustached masses. Picture it: two star-crossed lovers leaning in under a lamppost, only to be stopped by a deputy wielding a hygiene citation. Somewhere, a whole generation of Nevada men had to choose between love and lip hair. Today, it's one of those absurd laws that reminds us America once legislated romance like it was a medical procedure. If the Wild West was about freedom, Eureka missed the memo, because nothing says law and order like government-regulated kissing. 13. Baltimore, Maryland, the Lion movie. Ban Baltimore has a law forbidding anyone from taking a lion to the movies. This sounds insane until you realize someone clearly tried it. The rule was enacted in the 1920s after a local circus performer decided to bring his well-behaved lion to a silent film screening. Chaos ensued when the animal roared during a dramatic scene, sending the audience into a stampede that probably looked more entertaining than the movie itself. Instead of banning lions from society altogether, Baltimore just decided to keep them out of cinemas. Because, of course, a zoo pass was fine, just not a matinee. To this day, the law remains technically active, meaning if you show up to Star Wars with a jungle cat, you're not just weird, you're breaking city code. Baltimore, where the popcorn's fine, but the predator's not. 14. Pensacola, Florida, the barefoot ban. In sunny Pensacola, walking around barefoot in public is technically illegal. The rule was introduced back in the 1940s when city leaders decided that bare feet were a public nuisance. Apparently, someone's toes offended the moral order of Florida, which says a lot considering Florida's bar is flexible. The ordinance was meant to prevent unsanitary conditions, but it mostly led to absurd policing. Imagine a cop slowly approaching a beachgoer, writing a ticket for excessive natural contact with sand. Tourists were baffled. How do you ban bare feet in a beach town? Locals joked that the only way to comply was to wear shoes in the ocean. Today, it's one of those ancient laws that lingers quietly, like sunscreen from 1953. It's unclear if anyone's ever been cuffed over their flip-flop choices, but in Pensacola, the law still says, keep your souls holy and covered. 15. Portland, Oregon, don't whistle. Underwater. Portland's reputation for weirdness runs deep, literally. There's an old ordinance that prohibits whistling underwater. Nobody knows if it was written as a joke or an act of aquatic overconfidence. But the fact it exists means at some point a city official had to say, write it down. Someone's going to try it. Portland prides itself on individuality, but this might be the most unnecessary attempt at freedom ever recorded. The law probably came from the early 1900s, when the city dealt with a lot of river divers and dock workers. Maybe one of them tried to serenade the fish. The imagery is incredible. A cop leaning over a riverbank yelling, "Sir, stop humming at the carp!" It's a rule that feels like a metaphor for Portland itself. Quirky, pointless, and somehow entirely self-aware. 16. Lehigh, Nebraska. No donut holes for donkeys. Lehigh once passed a law forbidding citizens from feeding donuts to donkeys. The backstory? A county fair, a sugar rush, and a very unfortunate stampede. Sometime in the 1930s, locals thought it'd be cute to share pastries with the animals, until several over-caffeinated donkeys went berserk, kicked over fences, and trampled a lemonade stand. The town council's solution wasn't better fencing or supervision. It was legislation. The ordinance specifically mentions baked goods containing excessive sugar, which feels like the legal equivalent of saying, we learned nothing, but we wrote it down. Today, the rule still technically stands, so if you're ever in Lehigh with a Krispy Kreme and a pet donkey, you'd better hide your snacks. It's the kind of law that makes you wonder who the real animals were, the donkeys, or the voters who needed this written in ink. 17. Los Angeles, California. The toad-licking law. Los Angeles has plenty of wild nightlife, but here's one party rule you probably didn't expect. It's illegal to lick a toad. This wasn't random. It was written to stop people from getting high on amphibians. In the early 1990s, a bizarre trend spread through California after word got out that a certain desert toad's skin secretions caused hallucinations. Naturally, some Angelinos decided that licking frogs was cheaper than therapy. Hospitals reported cases of poisoning, hallucination, and one guy who claimed to have seen jazz. So the city cracked down, turning amphibian affection into a misdemeanor. Imagine the press conference. We'd like to remind residents, please stop French kissing wildlife. It's one of those laws that proves no matter how advanced a city gets, human curiosity will always find a way to require government intervention. Los Angeles banned toad-licking not out of cruelty, but because someone, somewhere, just had to try it. 18. Omaha, Nebraska, the barber music ban. In Omaha, barbers are legally forbidden from shaving customers if they're listening to music or humming along. The law, written in 1910, was allegedly passed to preserve concentration and reduce accidents. Translation: too many barbers got distracted by ragtime and started carving freestyle hairlines. The local paper at the time even described one customer who left with a rhythm in his heart and a slice on his chin. Instead of simply telling barbers to be careful, Omaha decided to ban musical multitasking entirely. Picture a poor barber standing in silence, clippers buzzing like existential dread, praying no one whistles near him. The rule technically still exists, though no one enforces it. Still, it's proof that at some point, a city council spent hours debating the dangers of humming during haircuts. Imagine the courtroom testimony. Your Honor, it was Sweet Caroline, and I just couldn't help myself. Omaha, where the groove really can cost you an ear. 19. Hartford, Connecticut. No speeding without a chaperone. In Hartford, a car can't legally move faster than 25 miles per hour without a man walking ahead of it waving a red flag. This law dates back to the early 1900s, when automobiles were new and terrifying to everyone, especially horses. Lawmakers decided the best way to manage this strange new contraption was to assign it a human escort, a sort of traffic nanny. So, if you wanted to drive across town, you needed a guy jogging in front of you like an anxious usher, warning pedestrians. Careful, mechanical demon approaching. Of course, nobody enforces it now, but it's still technically on the books. If Hartford ever reactivated the law, morning commutes would look like parades of exhausted interns waving flags at sedans. It's bureaucratic nostalgia at its finest, a law from a time when people thought cars were just faster carriages that needed adult supervision. 20. Fairbanks, Alaska, the Moose Intoxication Act. In Fairbanks, it's illegal to give alcohol to a moose. You'd think this wouldn't need to be said, and yet, here we are. The law was passed after a string of incidents in the 1970s where locals thought it'd be funny to get moose drunk. Spoiler, it was not funny. One particularly notorious case involved a bar mascot named Buzzy the Moose, who, after downing a bucket of beer, ran through a tavern wall and ended up asleep in a snowbank. The town decided that maybe, just maybe, serving booze to 200-pound forest tanks wasn't ideal public safety policy. The ordinance now specifically forbids providing fermented beverages to wildlife, which is a fancy way of saying, don't host happy hour for animals. Somewhere out there, a park ranger still has to explain to tourists that yes, moose DUI prevention is a real part of his job. It's America in a nutshell. We didn't stop people from doing it until someone actually did. 21. Tucson, Arizona, the Cactus Protection Law. In Tucson, it's illegal to cut down or damage a saguaro cactus, even if it's on your own property. These towering desert icons are treated like local royalty, and harming one can land you in serious legal trouble. The punishment? Up to 25 years in prison. Yes, you could literally serve hard time for cactus assault. The law was passed to protect Arizona's signature plant from vandalism and illegal collectors. But, naturally, someone still had to test it. In the 1980s, a man decided to shoot a saguaro for fun. The cactus, weighing over a ton, fell on him and crushed his car. Nature served justice faster than the courts ever could. Tucson's cacti are now like desert gods, ancient, spiky, and vengeful. You don't trim them, you worship them. It's the only place in America where landscaping could lead to a felony record. Arizona learned one thing that day. Never mess with a plant that can literally outlive the U.S. Constitution. 22. Providence, Rhode Island. The Pickle Law. In Providence, a pickle isn't legally considered a pickle unless it bounces. No, it's not satire. That's statute. The law came from a 1940s scandal where two men were caught selling rotten pickles to local markets. The state's Department of Agriculture had to determine what qualified as a real pickle. Their conclusion? Only a firm, bouncy pickle passes the test. So they dropped a few from table height, and the soggy fakes failed miserably. From that day on, the bounce test became the measure of pickled legitimacy. Imagine being the poor intern assigned to conduct daily pickle trials. Somewhere in Providence, a city inspector once proudly declared, "It's not fraud if it rebounds. It's bureaucracy at its finest," turning a food fight into official law. To this day, the rule remains on the books, making Rhode Island the only place where cucumbers face athletic requirements. 23. Salt Lake City, Utah, the Whale Ordinance. Landlocked Utah has one of the strangest laws in America. It's illegal to fish for whales in Salt Lake City. Yes, whales. This baffling rule somehow made its way into the city's wildlife code, and nobody has ever bothered to remove it. The law likely originated from a blanket fishing regulation template that included species irrelevant to Utah, but it's too hilarious to delete. So technically, if you're standing on the shores of the Great Salt Lake, rod in hand, and someone asks what you're fishing for, don't say whale. You could be cited for imaginary poaching. It's one of those laws that proves government paperwork has a sense of humor, even if unintentionally. The best part? Every few years, some clever reporter brings it up, and the city has to issue an official reminder that, yes, whale fishing is still illegal. It's the kind of rule that makes America beautiful, a country where even impossible crimes are against the law. Humans write laws for everything, except common sense. Which of these deserves a Nobel Prize in stupidity?